Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. It's your girl, Miss Eha, coming live with Journey with Trish, the podcast. So super duper excited to have these Black women of excellence in the building with me tonight. You know, you got to sit at the table with me. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some pretty sensitive topics. So, let me go ahead and give you my medical and psychiatric disclaimer. If you're having any type of medical or psychiatric emergency, I would refer you to your nearest emergency room. Call 911 or contact your primary provider or your primary psychiatric provider, because I am not your provider tonight. Also, want to throw out a trigger warning because we are going to be talking about grief and loss tonight. It is so important to get this message out to as many people as possible, especially during the holiday season. So please take this opportunity to like, comment, follow, and of course share so that we can reach as many people as possible tonight. I'll go ahead and start with some introductions. Who do I have all the way over there to my far right?
Hello, Janet Whitfield, the pastor of New Zion Church in Fairhope.
Okay, good to have you in the building with us tonight. And who do I have here to my direct right?
My name is Tabitha Hines. I am the CEO of the Jerabel brand, and I grew up in Fairhope, but I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia.
And from right here in the city of Mobile, who do we have here?
I'm Pastor Deborah Williams, former pastor of Greater Harvest Temple Ministry, now assistant pastor of the Glory Place in Mobile, Alabama.
Thank you all for being so courageous to come and talk to us tonight. I know for at least the two of you, for Tabitha and Deborah, this is your first time speaking publicly about this. You spoke about it publicly before, and so thank you. I just want to get that part out of the way, just to tell you guys thank you for coming, so that you can be a blessing to someone else tonight. Because we know a shining light that no one can see serves the world no purpose. Go ahead and get started. I believe your story starts a lot earlier than the rest. So tell us a little bit about your story, about your loss.
My loss came back in 2015, the beginning of a new year. Suddenly, in my home, we were just sitting down watching TV, watching a movie, and all of a sudden he developed a pain, and he went out to say he's gonna walk it off. And when he came back, he was clenching his chest and sweating, and I immediately knew what was going on with me being an RN. So told children to call 911, and from that point to the point he began to walk, and he was anxious, and he kept saying, "Deborah, come on, Deborah, come on." I'm like, "Where you going? Where you going?" And when I got him to calm down and sit down, and his head went back, I was the one that had to start CPR on him before the ambulance got there. And I started CPR, and when they came in, they continued what I was doing. But he really died in my arms. I knew he was gone. I knew that he had left me. And I knew once they was doing what they had to do routinely, but I knew he was already gone. And it was a shocker. I wasn't prepared. You always know that there are different sickness, because he did have diabetes, and he was headed into kidney disease, but he was fine. That day he had been going off. He went to the flea market. He was fine, and it just happened all of a sudden. And here I am. There I was, without a husband, after 28 years.
28 years.
28 years of marriage.
You guys have children? Do you have children?
Yes, we have 3 children. We have 2 children together and 3 bonus. I have one of mine, and he had 2, so we had 5 altogether.
Okay. So we're going to get back to a lot of your story in just a minute. I'm going to let the other ladies go ahead and share their story. And then I believe Tabitha.
I met my husband in 2006. He was one of the first people I met when I moved to the hot Atlanta.
To Atlanta.
It was an immediate attraction between him and I. When we was dating, I kind of knew he was sick. I remember going into his refrigerator and seeing the insulin, and I knew, we all know about diabetes, so we think we know. Never bothered me. Anyway, he progressively started to get worse. I could remember we had bought a house, got married, and I'm gonna say maybe about 4 months after we got married is when he really, really started to progressively get worse. Kidney function started to fail. And then in 2017 is when he started dialysis. I'm gonna say maybe a year or so after going into dialysis is when he developed congestive heart failure. In the midst of all of that, just numerous health scares. My husband was type 1, which is a little different from type 2. With type 1, they normally diagnose around when they're teenagers. They're insulin dependent, and with type 1, it just comes with so many things that can go wrong. Congestive heart failure. He had some kind of rare blood disorder. They found out he had sickle cell, the trait. He had the sickle cell trait. And because of the diabetes and because of the dialysis, my husband started to develop hypoglycemia real bad. My husband had been in 7 car accidents. From 2017 up until the day he died, he had 8 car accidents that he had been in just from his diabetes. He couldn't get an insulin pump because he just had so many things going on with clotting issues. He had gastroparesis, all these different things that prevented him from getting a pump that could have regulated his blood sugars. Then we had so many other things in between. It was very, very hard. So many times have I saved my husband where I found him when he passed out from being hypoglycemic. I can't tell you the number of times where I had to call and rush from work. He had an accident. The last accident he had, it was involving 2 other people. So we was facing these lawsuits. So it was a lot. And I never forget, probably about the 3rd or 4th year he was on dialysis, he looked at me, he said, "Tab, if you had known it was going to be this bad, would you have stayed?" And I told him, "Mike, nothing about our situation. I wouldn't have done nothing different because I love you. I didn't fall in love with the material or, all the normal things that normally attract us to men, the looks, the material things, and the sexual things. I didn't fall in love with, I fell in love with him." And all of that went away. Like I was telling Trish when I reached out to her about doing this, I said, as women, when we decide, okay, I want to marry this man, make sure that when all of those things that we normally are attracted to goes away, do you still love this man? Because all the vows that I took for richer, for poor, for better, I lived through it. I mean, I literally to the point where I had to do everything for him. And if that love wasn't genuine or true, I couldn't have made
been
it.
able to do it.
No.
I believe that. Okay.
Yes, well, my husband and I were married 29 years.
You did good.
John was 15 years older than me. I used to tease him and say, "You robbed the cradle," but that's all right. It was the best robbery ever. But after a marriage or 2 between us, we came together. It was a God thing. When you come together and you wouldn't have chosen based on your own list of must-haves or on both ways. So we were married, and John was a survivor of cancer for 10 years before he passed. But one thing about it, he was also a diabetic, all these things, but he was so strong. And when he passed away, he went to work that Thursday morning. He was feeling bad. We had been told by the doctors that we were coming close to the end of the different treatments for his cancer. But being pastor, we believe and know that God has the final say. So that Thursday, he went to work. He was still, and I thank God for this because he was a proud military man. He was able to take care of himself. He did everything. That Thursday morning, he went to work. We went in to maybe get fluids for weakness. And they said, no, according to your numbers, because even though we knew he was struggling, he was so strong and so healthy that I did not take him to the hospital expecting not to bring him home. So we went in that Thursday. That Friday, they gave him, continued to do fluids, began to run tests, and determined that the cancer had advanced. But I think about when we were there in the hospital, sleeping in that chair. If anybody slept in a hospital chair, that Saturday morning when I woke up, I could barely walk. So, as he always did and has always done, he said, honey, come lay down with me. So he took care of me up until that very last. But when they came in later that Saturday and began to tell us that the stage of his condition and referred us to palliative care, I could tell that his demeanor started to change. And he told me, he said, I'm okay. I'm ready to go home, but I worry about you. I said, we're going to be fine because I'm a fighter. I'm like, hey, we're going to do what we have to do. But I could tell his demeanor began to go down. He was quiet. And I asked him, I said, what are you doing? He said, just praying, like he always did. But then his vitals began to go down and he needed oxygen and things began to happen that the doctors knew. I knew in my heart, but my head wasn't receiving it. So they took me out of the room. And when he started to decline. But I thank God that you're never prepared, but I thank God he was the type of man that always gave me a foundation of God. And I know everybody, say, but that is what my foundation is. So even in that moment, and the one thing I regret, and I love everybody that came to the hospital, the one thing with the relationship we had that I look back on is that I know some people think about it was just me and them when it happened, or I wanted so much just to have him by myself. And that's those last moments. And I don't know if anybody else has ever felt that way. I always hear people say maybe they didn't want it that way. But because of our relationship, I long for that. But then God has shown me that he was loved by so many. So yes, although he had been struggling with cancer for 9 years, again, I did not walk into that hospital not expecting to not bring my husband home.
So what I want to talk about, because I think everyone here, not arguably, are women of faith, right? And so I want to talk to everybody that's out there, someone who may also be a woman of faith, or family member of anybody who, anybody who may have lost somebody, or who may have a family member that's ill. I want to talk about those days because, I follow you all on Facebook, and I see days when, most of the times when I see you, you all look amazing, strong, courageous, stoic, like nothing is wrong. But I want to talk about those days when you're by yourselves or with your families and you're vulnerable.
Yes.
I want to talk about those, and I want to remind people out there that that does not put your faith in jeopardy because you have those days when you're grieving. Anybody, whoever wants to take that first.
I was going to say, I think on my Facebook page, managing grief is a roller coaster ride, first of all. You never know how it's going to show up. You never know when it's going to show up. Is it going to show up as shows up as pain, physical pain, and it shows up as joy, depending. But I started to share, and some people may say overshare, but I share. Just the other day, I shared Thanksgiving was great. I made it through. We remembered the day later that day. I shared, and it said, "It's been a rough day." That next day was rough. But you have to let people know that that's okay, because there is always, I think, forever there will be this roller coaster ride. But as long as you know your core, I call them my 3 F's. I have my friends, I have family, and my faith. And from my core, my faith allows me to know who I am at all times. So therefore, no matter if it's showing up as a rough day, a good day, I go to my core knowing if it's a rough day, I'm still okay. If it's a good day, which at sometimes you don't even think you're ever going to have a good day again or smile again. But you have to realize when you know who you are at the core, no matter what that day looks like, you draw from that, whether I need strength from that day, whether I need wisdom, how to deal with business, whether I need just whatever I need, I know that I can go to it and get it. And I have a sister group. We talk about support groups, Sisters Inspiring Sisters. That's been my support group. And they have been amazing. It was kind of hard because I started the group because I wanted to be to other people what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then God flipped that. They were to me. They have been to me. And it's to me what I need. So on those bad days, draw on those friends. Draw on that God has given you to support you.
Add something that's Tabitha?
Yeah, whew, that was a lot. Thank you for that. It when they say grief come in waves, it does. I can't tell you guys, ladies, a number of times I've been stuck in Atlanta traffic and I feel it coming. And I used to try to bottle it up, and then by the time I get to work, I'm a mess. So I just pull over, let it go, go on about my business. My husband died at home. He was in the hospital so much. We never got the chance to talk about hospice because he was a fighter to the end. And I found him, and it was a scene. So I definitely, I've always been supportive of mental health. I'm in the medical field myself. And sometimes those in the medical field, and Trish can attest to this, we the worst patients.
Yes.
I don't need that. And so I realized that I needed it because of not only of losing him, but it was just the journey. I work in GYN oncology, and I can remember one of my patients telling me that she has no problem about death. It's the journey, it's the pain, it's the suffering, it's the dehumanization sometimes that these illnesses can take us through. My husband, he was a very handsome guy, but by the time he died, the disease process made him look so much older than what he really was. And it took away a lot of his dignities. But so for me, just processing all of that and all the trauma and all the different things the hardships that we went through, my husband got to the point where he couldn't work. So it was a financial burden and all of that. So when he died, I don't question God. I feel like you can question God in a healthy sense, of being respectful. And the main thing for me is like, why now? Because Mike had been through so much and he always fought back. And I always like, he's gonna fight this. And my husband had got COVID a month prior to him passing away. And I'm like, he got this. He gonna fight this. He's always bounced back. And so I found myself asking, why? Why? Yeah, I knew my husband was sick. I don't put a time frame on anyone's life because any of us can get out there and something happens or whatever. But I still knew in the back of my mind that he was sick. And because of his other illnesses, they was telling me all these, he don't have this, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. So, and then because he was so young, because my husband was 44, I was like, I wasn't angry, but it's like I see all these other people doing these things, couples are happy, and I'm like, we did everything right. We got married, did this, and we're trying to live. And I'm like, my husband was a good guy. He wasn't out here thieving. He did everything right. And so for me to work through those emotions and still have to maintain my household now because I don't have him, I got to make sure the yard cut, the plumbing's done, and trying to work and keep sanity. So I'm like, okay, I need a therapist. And that's when I went and found a grief counselor. She's been really, really good. I love her to death. That has helped me a lot, along with my faith and my family and my friends. And you have to really dig deep down because I was a caretaker. And I had neglected myself for so long, and I realized that how burnt out I was. And you don't realize sometimes that you're depressed. And I realized, okay, I am depressed because I found myself in a corner crying all the time. And even before my husband passed, I was going through these bouts of depression, just dealing with everything that I was going through. And then I thought, okay, now that he's gone, but it just intensified more because I was missing him and, all of the what ifs and could have beens and, why we couldn't do, why he couldn't live long so we could do this and do that. And so it helped me to remember the good times and that knowing that he's no longer suffering because he did. And I used to always cry because there's nothing I could do to stop his suffering. And just rely on your faith in God and your family and that little inner strength that you have. Just try to capitalize on as much as possible. And if you feel the need to cry, cry. If I feel the need and I don't feel like being bothered with people, I don't. I put me first now. I haven't done that in so long because I put my husband first. As far as taking care of him, make sure he has what he needs. So now it's all about Tab and make sure my mental, my spiritual state is balanced. And when that is balanced, I feel like your physical state will balance out too as well.
So before I let you talk about on that topic, I'm going to go ahead and say shout out to caregivers out there. Being a caregiver, I'm telling you, it is the hardest job that anyone will ever have. I don't know the exact percentage, but I know that a very high percentage of caregivers will actually die before the person that they are taking care of. Why? Because of what Tabitha just said, because you don't take care of yourselves. It's hard if you're a woman and you got to go to the GYN appointment. Could you imagine having to take your family member that you're taking care of with you to go get a pap smear? Okay, it becomes very difficult for you to take care of yourself. You become very untrusting, with allowing someone else to come in your home, which is your haven, your private space. And you got to leave and go to work and leave this stranger in your house. And then you got to worry about them, whether they really are taking care of your relative as good as they should be. So it's so much to take into consideration. But shout out to y'all caregivers out there. I want you to know your reward is going to be so huge. You may not see it now, but it is the most rewarding job ever. I also wanted to thank you for being so honest and transparent. Sometimes when somebody passes away, you actually do start to look at other people like, I know my husband, I know my daddy, I was a better person than they are. Why would you allow them to stay, and take my husband or my daddy or so it is a part of grieving, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Wow. So much. As you said, as being a caregiver, I've been there just about all of my life. I've been a caregiver. And with my husband was really actually a healthy man. He was healthy when I met him. He was fine. He was back in the Jerry Curl days. He was he was that man.
He was that man.
He was that man. He was a musician and he played the keys and and he was good. We did workshops. That's how we actually met because doing choirs. I was in choir, and he was a musician, and I was a director, and that's how we met and came together. And after we married, I mean, like I said, he was healthy up until the time that he wasn't. At the age of 40, he had a stroke. And we was pastoring then. And he had a stroke at the age of 40, but he bounced back. He bounced back. I was his caregiver. I went to every appointment, every therapy session. I was there. And I had at that time that was just able to do it. I made my work schedule. I had type of job where I can just go to work and come back and take him to his doctor's appointment. And I was there for everything. He bounced back from the stroke after a year, back preaching, back doing what he do. And for the next 10 years, like I say, his sicknesses came after his stroke. The diabetes came after the stroke. High blood pressure came. It could have been already there, but there was the diagnosis didn't come. You know how men, they don't normally go to the doctor. So he was one of those ones that did not go to the doctor until it was too late. So I believe all the things probably was already there. That could have been preventative if he had been going, but he did not. And even though I was a nurse, he was like, that's what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to tell me to go to the doctor. You're grown. I couldn't make a grown man do nothing. So, but anyway, but after that, like I say, he was up, he was healthy, he was still functioning, he was still preaching hard. He was just still doing what he do, even during his sickness, doing all the things. After the diabetes, he was diagnosed with diabetes, and he was taking his medicine, taking his insulin, but he never had another diabetes attack. Never, but never had to go back to the hospital. But he was a man of faith, so he never called it what it was. He just said that thing. I had that thing. He never said I had a stroke. So he never talked about his sickness. Even though I knew because of who I was and me being with him, I knew the times that he was sick, but he never would just say it. So even on that time that it happened, I was like you. I was like, I've been a nurse. I've resuscitated patients over and over again. And the day that I needed to resuscitate my husband, I couldn't do it. He died. I say, Lord, how could this be? I was able to save so many other people and I wasn't able to save my husband. And that played on me for a minute. But what I would say, I did not take the time to grieve. I went right back into action because of us being, pastors over a church. And they came and they were crying and they were, hollering and they were, and I say, God, what am I going to do with these folks? And he told me to get up. It was the first Sunday of the new year. He said, get up, wash your face, go to the church, put on your white, go to the church.
And this was the morning that he passed away.
The morning that he passed away. He passed away at 3-something that morning. I even went to work because I had a patient that I was feeding. I went to work at 7 that morning, and the people that was there, they didn't know what had happened. And they said, and the first question that came out the lady's mouth is why I knew God was with me all the time. She asked me, she said, how's your husband doing? She's never asked me that question before. Why are you asking me this today? I said, well, let me feed John, and then I'll talk to you about that later. And while I was feeding him, and I got through feeding him, her husband, which is not a Christian, do not want to go into anybody's church. She's a devout Christian. He came in with this white carnation. He said, John, give this to Miss Deborah. And when he did that, I broke. He was like, oh my God, what's the matter? What's wrong? And I told him what had happened. They were like, why are you here? I said, I just needed to get away. I needed to breathe. So after I left there and I went back home and I got ready and I said, God, you got to give me the strength. I went on to the church. And I was sitting in my office. I told my elder, I said, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. He said, well, if you can't do it, I'm here for you. But I got up and I walked. That was the longest walk to get to the sanctuary. But when I walked in the sanctuary, that same white man that's never been in anybody's church, he was sitting there on the front row. I see it, and with another white carnation, I say, God, I hear you. I said, if I don't preach ever again, I got to preach today for this man. I don't know what I preached. I don't know what came out. All I know is he said, you sure know how to preach. That's all I heard. I said, well, that gave me the strength to get through that day. But I would say that and I've been going ever since. I heard about grief counseling maybe about a year ago. That really pricked my spirit to say that is something that I should have done. That's something that I probably still should do. Because as I carried the ministry on for 8 years, it got to a point where I said, God, this is something I can't continue to do on my own. And that's when God gave me the revelation to join my ministry under my bishop and allow him to cover me, which he became my pastor a year after my husband died, because I was alone. I was out there. I had no mentors. I had nobody to show me the way. I just had to figure it out on my own. And as I did, God was with me. My children, they was with me. And I heard somebody talking about a blended family. I had children from a blended family, but after that happened, one of them just left. But the thing about it is that her father told her she would do it. But the other one still calls me mom today. So my children got me through it, but it was a rough time. And I would say to anybody, we think that, us, grief counseling, going to a therapist is taboo. We don't supposed to do that. But I would say, even as being in the nursing medical field, that you need somebody that you can talk to. You need somebody that you can vent to that ain't gonna put it back on you, because we got to look like, when I get up and I go out, I can't look like what I'm going through. I got to be the strength for everybody else. I had to be the strength for my family, for my children. I had to be the strength for the church. I had to be the strength for everybody. But who was going to be the strength for me? So I had to go back and try to get myself up. So I had one motto that I pretty much had to use to get me through just about every depressed state or every grieving state. But Deborah, get up, get over it, and move on. Get up, get over it, and move on. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. Just as long as you don't stop, keep it moving. And that's pretty much what got me to where I am today. Because even with my husband, it was ministry. We was in ministry for over 20 some years. And his life was my life. His people were my people. His friends pretty much were my friends. So once he died, I felt I had to reinvent myself, because I didn't know who I was. Who was Deborah? Who was Deborah friends? What did Deborah like to do? Because everything was pretty much centered around him. So yes, I would say to anybody that's going through grief that they need somebody that they can just go and lay it all out.
Well, Pastor Deborah, I'm sorry. I really like the fact that you brought out the importance of therapy, you being a pastor and having a strong Christian faith. I mean, I grew up in a strong Christian household, and, sometimes some of us in the Black community, we feel all I got is my faith, and I got Jesus, and I have the Bible. Well, yeah, and that's a very great foundation to have. I know there's some other experiences that I went through that I should have had some counseling for, but I never did. And I'm like, I got my faith and my strength. Well, you don't get the right counseling to deal with that trauma. It can sometimes it will affect decisions, poor decisions that you make later in life. But even though we have that strong Christian faith and that belief, and we know the Bible, it is not being sacrilegious by going to get therapy. getting that extra help, that extra outlet, someone that doesn't know anything about your situation, just having that outlet to scream, to reveal those deep, dark secrets or problems or issues or those emotions that you can express where you normally can't, even though you may have family that you're very close to, friends, but you always have in the back of the mind that, will they judge me if I say this? You know what I mean? So to have a therapist is really good that you really need therapy when dealing with something like that and not just, oh, I have my Christian faith.
You truly have to understand that grief, depression, anxiety, all of these are conditions, right? And so if you were struggling, if you were dealing with diabetes or a heart disease, you would not just go to your family member's house and expect your family member to be able to help you or fix you, right? I try to get away from saying fix you, but you would not expect them to be able to do that. You would go to a professional to help you with those things. You would go to somebody that you pay for, to help you with those conditions. And so we have got to understand that your brain is an organ just like your heart is, just like your kidney is. And sometimes our minds get a little broken. And so when they get broken, they have to be healed. And a part of healing may be therapy, and sometimes it's medication. We've got to get more comfortable with that. Shout out to all of the churches who have, I know my church, Restoration Fellowship Ministries, and Felicia Shepherd, we actually have a grief ministry. I would challenge every church, I don't care how big or how small you are, to start some type of mental health ministry, start some type of grief ministry, so that, because if the leader would be more, if the leader is more apt to put it out there, then your flock will be more apt to follow. So we need more leaders to be educated on mental health and anxiety, depression, grief, all of it. And so then you can you make your congregation more comfortable with it when their leader is more educated on it.
And that is so true. I've just been blessed in that area. Our church family, we were all grieving together, but we pulled together. I thank God for the levels of expertise we had within our group, but I'm always a believer at whatever is necessary to keep moving, to continue, because it can be a moment even in a ministry where when your pastor passes away, you're either going to hold on to what you know and keep going, or many people just say we can't go any further. So we have to give our members, our family, ourselves the tools that we need. I've been so fortunate in our support group with nurses, people that have level of expertise, that sometimes I don't have to say a thing. I go in and the conversation I know they'll say something that they do during their grief process. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not losing it. I know, but I've stayed open to therapy, because whatever is necessary, we have to talk. We have to have conversations. We have to have those hard conversations. Because we can't go on what we used to do. There are people say, why am I spend that money? And it's been a time where they didn't have the money. I look at my grandmother who lost children, who lost family members. I look at my mom, and sometimes they maybe don't have the resources. So it is so important that our churches, as a matter of fact, in 2024, as part of our ministry, we will be expanding our grief programs. We are going to pool in therapists. We're going to pool in whatever is necessary to get the help, because I think being a leader is not necessarily knowing it all or not going through it, but showing others that as your leader, I'm here to say, and my faith is strong, but I'm going to say, I'll go with you to therapy if that is necessary. My main goal is that you begin to get the tools that's necessary to be healthy, to get back to a stable place. And I think that's what churches and leaders have to do, is support each other. And I think the biggest example that we can give as leaders is, hey, if I see where I need it or that trauma gets to that point, I will definitely go to that next level. That because it's not one or the other. I don't know where this competition comes in or make it feel like it's our lack of faith, but it's not. God put people here to help us to process things. He put people in our lives. I've just been fortunate where I've had such a strong support system, and my daughter is a nurse practitioner, and she did some work with counseling. But then I had to also realize that I can't depend on her for that, because she was needing it. But what I needed to show her was, honey, if you, whatever you need, whatever is necessary. And I'm just thankful that we've had the support of our church members. I'll tell you what really got me is there is a little girl that goes to our church. My children are my backbone. And I say this because there's a little girl that goes to our church that lost her mother. And I've watched her grow from the years from where she started to now. She's blossomed, she's bloomed, she's opened up. And it's something about, and you have to learn from those that God put. It's something about me watching her process that grief, that I know that the same God that's bringing her through it is going to bring me through it. If she needed counseling, would I tell her to go? Of course I would, because you love him. So we have to get comfortable. We need to get the tools. We need to get the language. We need to get the love for one another to do whatever is necessary to take you back to that core of knowing that you can make it, you can do it. Because as much as we miss our loved ones, God had to show me that we have a life, and it's just like a life with a bowl. And grief has been poured in my bowl that will follow me for the rest of my life. We have to manage it. We have to learn. And when it's trying to manage us, I still have to benefit from that. Does that draw me closer to my friends? Does that draw me closer to God? Does it help me have a better perspective and love better? So I said grief worked for me, and somebody said, what does that mean, grief working for you? I have to take that grief and make it work for me in some way, even if it means me realizing I got to rest. Or even after so many years, I still need some help with this situation. But I think being open is the main thing.
Definitely, you have to be open, encourage, and don't try to not. I hope that we all get to the point to where you're not, having these breakdowns every day. So in the beginning, or maybe you held it in, for years and years and years, and then you got to the point to where you finally released, so you could let it out. But if you're having some weak moments, let somebody know. Don't feel like you have to keep that in and hide that you have weak moments. I always say that you're grieving and having a support system when you're grieving, it actually starts before the grief ever got there.
Yes.
When you're kind to people and when you build relationships with people and they're already going to know you and that you were married and that your husband was sick, or pastor that you went and talked to who's always been encouraging. Just like I say, the hospital discharge starts at the time of admission. And so I say that grieving and preparing for grief starts at the time of birth. When you start building relationships, that is when you prepare. When you get into a relationship with somebody, when you start during a courting period, that is when you prepare for grief. It's when, while you're dating, you are taking every opportunity, like you said, to make those memories. Because if you don't make any good memories, then what good memories are you going to have to look back on? To kind of help lift your spirit on those days when only the bad memories, are coming in. So you want to try your best when you have those good days. And like 47 years old, you weren't expected to be here, And we don't expect to have to go through these things, especially at a younger age. So you better be making those memories. using that good time to be good to each other. Because I'm not gonna say I think, I do know that it does bring more peace when you did all that you could have done.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. So I want, before we start running out of time, because I don't know if this sort of timer is accurate, but I know that we needed to get into some of the business part of it, the financial hardships that come with it. Tabitha, I believe that you wanted to start talking about that, and just give somebody some insight into how they, as much of your story as you feel comfortable sharing, and what advice you have for them. And I'll let everybody kind of give that.
For and foremost, have life insurance, especially when you are married. Please understand, when you married and that other person dies, you by law are responsible for that. It just kind of irks me when I see people, and maybe I shouldn't say that, but I see people living a fabulous life, and then something happens, and now we're doing these GoFundMe accounts and fish fries and all of that. Get some insurance, because you may be able to get enough money raised to bury your loved one. But what about afterwards? You still got a mortgage to pay. You still got all the other bills that comes along with owning a home, or whether you're an apartment or not or whatever. You still have bills when that person left. And so make sure that you have insurance. And if your loved one, spouse, have pre-existing conditions, that is something is going to be a challenge for you. It was a challenge for me to get insurance because my husband was already a diabetic. So it's very challenging, but I was able to get some. And then there's other supplemental plans that you can get to help feed into that, because you don't always get the maximum amount when it's a pre-existing condition and so forth. Like, they reduce the death benefit amount. But I found out that there's things like Aflac. There's other supplemental policies that you can get that covers critical illness, hospital. There's one for end-stage kidney disease, transplant. I highly recommend people to definitely look into getting those, because those pay directly to you. I was able to cash out on a couple of those that I had took out. And it was very, financially beneficial for me to do that. So I'm glad that I took that. Some of us that work at these, hospitals that offer, hospitalization plans, take advantage of those, because you just never know when you may have to be in a hospital. And with those plans, they pay directly to you. They function differently than health insurance. Health insurance paid to the doctors or the providers. Well, with those other supplemental policy plans, they pay directly the benefit to you. So I do highly recommend. So even some of your credit unions offer a hospitalization plan. Taking advantage of that. I know it may be an extra bill, but let me tell you, in the long run, when you have your loved one that gets sick, they're in the hospital, in and out of the hospital, that's time away from work for them. That little money can replace what they may have missed. And
because most short-term disabilities will even only pay you, I think, 66
mhm.
and a third percent. So having that
Yeah.
extra,
If you paid up the extra 10%. So I definitely recommend that, that concern. And then just, when you get married, just look at your finances and just go into your marriage when you start to just make big purchases. Is this something I can afford on my own? If something happens to my spouse, that's something that me and my husband both did. When we made a purchase, or when we bought our home, we made sure that it's something that we can afford on our own in case something happens to one of us. And then my husband has always been in tune with his health, so he really, really educated me. Because I'm just being naive and blindsided because I'm not even thinking about it. But when it's your husband, all of these things fall in your lap. Another thing is I would recommend is definitely check your state laws as far as spousal debt. Certain states, I think one in particular, Texas, if your husband go out and run up $100,000 in bills, you're responsible for that, whether you sign for it or not. So these are things that, I know we don't think about, but you have to. But in Georgia, you're responsible for debt if you sign for it. My husband had accumulated a lot of debt, as you guys can probably imagine, with dialysis, numerous hospitalizations. Fortunately for me, I just typed a letter because I didn't sign for it. I sent them a copy of the death certificate, and call it a day. But not knowing that, and you lose your spouse, and now you got a mortgage to pay, you got all this debt that your husband and win it, now they're suing you, and now you're trying to grieve, and then you got children. We didn't have any children, so that wasn't an issue or problem. But that's another thing too I wanted to talk about, is this whole thing about Social Security. But after my husband died, people are, oh, you're going to get all this money for Social Security. And no, let me debunk that.
Yeah.
You only get money
They
if your
both get-
child, if you have children. When you're a young person or under 60, you can't draw on their Social Security.
And I didn't know that. I just thought you was still automatic. Honestly, thought you was still able to
No.
get that.
Like when my age, me being 47, they tell me the earliest I can draw on his Social Security is like 62. But
So
by
you
that,
could still get it, but no time soon. It would
but
just be
here's
like,
the catch to that. If my Social Security is more than his, then I will only get mine. And of course, by that time, of course, mine will be more because I'm making more. So they give you the betterment of the two. You don't get both. And that's the misconception that I think a lot of people have, is that, oh, I can get both. No, you don't. You can't get both. Whichever one is the
I
greatest.
mean, most time it's not a whole lot.
No.
Anyway, even when you've like done considerably well, Social Security.
No, it's not a lot. It's the
Is-
betterment of two. And you only get $255. That's it. Y'all. You don't get no paid
Call it
or
a day.
nothing
Say
like that.
thank you.
That is it. That's all you get. That is all you get. So yeah, I just wanted to definitely, when we're younger, in our 30s and 40s, we get married. We tend not to think about things
That's
like
right.
that, but we need to, because it can be life changing. Fortunately for me,
Yes.
that I was a little prepared. I wish I could have been better prepared, but that's okay. Knowledge is power. But I just would like to put the word out there for my other sisters and brothers, because there's men that have to bury their loved ones. Just make sure, we live in our best life. We're doing all these different things. Have some insurance, because just don't depend on these fish fry. Because when you go to that funeral home, they want to know how you're paying right away. They're not trying to sit around and
No,
wait
they're
for
not.
you to come up with whatever you're trying to come up
Put back in the
with.
freezer.
Exactly. So and
Till
it's
you get
just
the money.
Yeah, I mean, like even at the nursing homes when I used to do hospice, when you have to call an ambulance, when you have to call somebody to pick up the body from even at a nursing home, somebody got to have a check there to give the ambulance service to take that body. And they will not leave with that body. And they walk up to you like this is no joke. Which one is the family member who's in charge? And I'll go, well, that lady over there. And they'll say, okay, and they're going there. Miss so-and-so, how you doing? I'm so sorry for your loss. It's going to be X amount of money. Do you have a check for that? They don't care that you're crying. They don't care that who you just lost. They are going to want that money. So even though insurance policies are not going to pay for that night. And so that's where it comes, that financial responsibility and having some type of reserve too. Because some things, like I don't think you can go to the printer. Well, I know some funeral homes will do it, but you can't go to a printer for your programs with the insurance policy. You can't buy the food for the repast
right.
with the insurance policy because it hadn't been paid out
Right.
yet. And so sometimes that's why it takes so long for us to actually get somebody buried, because we haven't been better prepared financially.
That's what I would tell with my case. My husband had got sick, and in the hustle and the bustle of some way or another, he allowed the insurance policy to lapse. So when I tried to get it back, of course, I couldn't get it back. That was an insurance policy we hadn't been paying on because our children was small, so I couldn't get it back. But in the midst of it, he was a good saver, so I didn't have to go through that. He had money saved that I didn't know about until he left here.
Thank
And I
God
was
for
like,
small
"Nick,"
favors.
can I say, I'm like, Negro. But, that saved me. But I tell people today, before you allow your insurance, your life insurance to lapse.
You told me that.
Let your lights get cut off. Let your water, your gas get cut off, because you can get them cut back on, just pay a deposit.
Yep.
But that life insurance,
Yep.
if you let it lapse and your health has changed from
Yep.
the time that you got it, you will not get it back.
No.
You told me
So-
that, and I've been overnighting mine ever since then. I don't even put it in regular mail. I need a confirmation
Yeah.
that it got there.
Yes, yes. So that's what I
And
said.
understand that there are sometimes those gap times there too, from the time that you first get it to the time it's effective. And I did that with my husband. I had to have like 2 years.
Yeah.
It was, I got it on this day, but it was effective 2 years later. So
Right.
I'm like, Lord.
I have a friend who actually went through that. So you can't go and get an insurance policy
Mhm.
today and leave tomorrow and expect that they're going to
Exactly.
pay that
Yeah.
off.
Right.
There's actually like a clause in there
Yeah.
that tells you, especially if you have these certain diseases, you have to live this amount of time for those
Mhm.
insurance policies
Kick in.
to kick in.
Yes.
So take all of that into consideration. So
That's
don't
true.
wait till you get older and get
Mm-mm.
sick. Go ahead and get your insurance policies. For children, I know you can still get like the Globe life policies and those Gerber policies. And those are actually whole life policies that your children can later, well, actually those will pay off. But then they can actually take them and have them for they'll cover burial. They can build on those policies as well. So take advantage of those
That's
Gerber
right.
and whole life, those baby policies too when they're children.
And that's it. I learned start young. Let that be a part of, just like when you say, if your job says you want place of employment, say you want health insurance, or let the life insurance. But what I suggest is always have a life insurance outside of your
Yes.
employer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because people, especially when you're young, you change, you elevate to new levels of employment, new jobs that may come along with a waiting period. Always have you something outside
Oh, yeah.
of your employer
That's good.
as far as life insurance, and not get caught in that gap. Make it a priority, be a good steward. And I just think it goes back to just education. We're saying no judgment, no shame of where we are, but now that we know, let's go out and make it a priority. And
Right.
also, as you get older, my husband was 15 years older than me. And he was very proud of that. And so was I. But know the policies that you have.
Mhm.
Know what you have. Know what the stipulations, because some policies will begin to decrease in value
Mhm.
depending on age. So know what you have. Let's just take the time to read that fine print. Have something for your family, and something outside your job, outside of your employment, because you never know. You have a layoff. I had an employment time. Yes, I had but when I left, that wasn't there. And once you reach a certain age, it's more difficult and it's more expensive.
And then
to
I will
change.
add to that, if you do have a policy with your employer and you leave that employer, you can absolutely call that insurance company and tell them you would like to port that policy. It's called portability. And so you can now pay that money directly to them for that portability policy. And then you don't have a waiting period because that policy has already been active.
Mhm.
But you only got like that first, I think some companies is 30 and
Yeah,
some
it's
is
a
60
window.
days.
Yeah,
It's a
just
window.
60 days.
So
Mhm.
when just like your health insurance, when you get ready to, what do they call Cobra? Just like when
Yeah.
they give you that extension for Cobra where you can pay your own, where you can actually call that insurance company, and make sure you take that information. A lot is for most of my life. I had all these benefits, right, from work. I didn't even know what the names of the companies were. Take the time to write down all of that information. This is who I have. I have, my Allstate cancer policy and my Colonial critical care policy. And then put them somewhere like with the login, because they don't really send you out policies no more, but put them somewhere with all of your information so that you have them. Now, the most important part is, and I'm going to tell them myself a little bit, when you got this stuff, you got to use it, right? I probably have got enough money sitting in between Chris getting sick and the cancer policies and the critical care and in the hospital. I've been in the hospital, child been in the hospital. I have yet to file any of those. So your girlfriend will be paid.
Yes, you are.
Gonna be paying. I'm gonna go ahead and get on it. I hate doing paperwork. I really need like an assistant for my paperwork. Anybody want to add anything else before I ask my final question as far as financial advice?
One other thing, another thing that I experienced that I was completely mortified about. When your loved one die at home and there is a death scene. For one, I know in Georgia, they do not remove the body if there's no suspected foul play.
Mm-hmm.
I can never forget when my husband died, and I already knew he was gone. I called the paramedics, and the police came out. So as the coroner she's getting ready to leave, and he was still in the bedroom. I'm like, excuse me, where are you going? And she was like, oh, I'm leaving. I said, what am I supposed to do with my husband? She's like, oh, that's your responsibility. So I broke down. Unfortunately, I'm glad I have two of my really good friends there. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do with him? And she's like, oh, it's your responsibility. So I'm like, you know, I mean, I've had loved ones to die, but I've never been the one in charge or never had to do this. So I learned quickly that, you know, that's the case. And I think with Alabama too, you're responsible for removing that body. So I guess just, you know, having a trusted funeral home. But out here, I grew up in Alabama. So we Googled one, and fortunately, it was the one we Googled was a good one. And he came out and he got it. My husband, there was a scene, and I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do about this? Because there was, you know, clearly need to be cleaned up. They don't do that either. Like, so what am I supposed to do? Because I couldn't do it because you're in an emotional state right now. Mm-hmm. I can't do this. So what I found out is that you have to hire a hazmat crew to come out, especially when there's blood and other bodily fluids involved. That's what I had to do. Fortunately for me, because that was a $12,000 bill, your homeowner's insurance will cover that. That's something I never knew. Your homeowner's insurance will cover it. That's something that, you know, if you have a sick loved one that may be at home, you might want to check into this, but your homeowner's insurance will cover the cleanup, and they will cover the dwelling. So I had to get new carpet. I had to get the walls repainted. They won't cover the furniture, but they will cover the dwellings. Something I never knew.
That's good information. So before I ask this final question, what I do also want to add is pre-planning. When you do know, you know, we all know that at some point we are all going to leave here. And some of us know that it's going to be days or weeks, you know, or the time is coming. We have some family members on hospice, or, you know, the doctors have called you and called the family and they've talked to you. You hit the word, that you said the word, you are an emotional mess. It takes so long at the funeral home to plan a funeral. It takes so long. And so now you're already emotionally like drained, exhausted. You haven't slept. And they sitting there trying to talk you out of all your money, trying to sell you everything they ever designed that you really don't need. And so take advantage of that pre-planning. The worst that could happen if you go to the funeral home and make all these arrangements is that you don't have to use it right now. That's the worst thing that can happen. If you don't use it today, you can do it later. You use it later. So take advantage of that, because it really made, I know when it came to my parents, both of them, when we found out that my dad was going to be dying, we went ahead and made pre-arrangements for him. And so while I was sitting there, I was like, you know what? I should just go ahead and make my mom's arrangements. My mom wasn't sick. My mom was not sick. You know, well, I mean, you know, she was down and she required total care, but I had no idea that my mama was gonna die that quickly. But it made it so much easier, you know, to go ahead and have both of them right there. And at that time, it was like, okay, well, you can just make payments on it. And so I just made payments on, and don't fall for those burial plots and think that you're getting a lot of money because you already got a burial plot. The burial plot, I think my mama paid like $400 for like 2 burial plots. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. We already got the burial plot. Honey, that burial plot is nothing. Then you got to pay for the chairs for them to bring to the graveyard. You got to pay for the carpet. You got to pay for them to open the grave. You got to pay for them to close the grave. Everything that's out there, that ice that they bring you is good ice, but it ain't free. Okay. So take advantage and go ahead and start pre-planning if you can. I don't care if you ain't sick right now. Like I've said before, you know what? I think because y'all know me, my funeral gonna be dope. I say it all the time. I wish I could be there. It's gonna be dope. I always say I'm gonna go plan my own funeral. But anyway, listen, I would like to know the one thing or the weirdest thing that's ever triggered you and made you just fall. Mine was in the middle of the grocery store, and I saw. I was at Sam's, and I used to always get these little move the meals out the refrigerator because it was like a double meal, and it was enough to feed both of my parents. And I would like stack up on these. And so I went in the store one day, and I was gonna buy them, but I knew my mama didn't eat leftovers, and so I'm like, well, if I buy them, it's gonna go to waste because it's too much for her. And it reminded me that my dad wasn't there to eat the other half. And I just fell apart right there in Sam's. What's the weirdest like thing? Something that seems like it would be so minuscule that's happened that you've seen and it's triggered you and just brought on grief.
Well, mine, I have so many because we did everything together. It's like he's everywhere. But the one that I didn't expect, our Saturday morning routine was I slept in, he went and got donuts. So when my time was up, he would say, okay, get up, I have your breakfast. So I was gonna go, I can go now, but that first time that I just thought I was gonna casually take my granddaughter to the donut shop, and I get to the door and literally couldn't speak, tears rolling, felt my body actually melting down because all that flowed in, remembering our Saturday morning. So here I am, these people going in and out of the donut shop. And needless to say, we left without donuts because I barely got back to the car. And I'm like, you never know where that trigger is going to come from and when it's going to come. You don't, sometimes it comes, I know there's going to be, I know some places that I can't go back to yet. I'm easing into, but that I just had no clue. And, but like everything else in its own time,
In its own time.
you will be able to do that.
How about you, Tab?
It was some good friends of ours, Mike and I. Like you said, you develop these friendships that is associated with your husband. And I'm like, I was new to Atlanta. So a lot of people that I've met and known and grow to love, they're still family, like family to me. It was through my husband. But a couple, Misha and PJ, love them. They had a little get together not too long after Mike had passed. And I hadn't been over to their house, but PJ built this little sound booth in his garage. And my husband was big into music. He did music when he was alive. And when I walked up, and I hadn't been over there since he had passed. When I walked up, I just lost it because he used to love coming over there. We used to have some great times with them. He would always go get in that darn booth and call himself rapping or whatever. And he was doing it. And I just looked at it and I just lost it because he loved it. It was a trigger. Yeah. It was a trigger for me because he loved doing that. And so, yeah.
Smallest thing that triggered you.
It's pretty much looking over with me. I was in the pulpit and getting ready to do a sermon, and all of a sudden the thoughts and everything came flooding over me. I hadn't broke like that. I left out of the pulpit and ran back to my office, and I just broke. I just broke because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. He's supposed to be here. This is where he's supposed to be in. And yeah, that was maybe like 3 months in. 3 months in, and I had been strong all the time. Hey, I got this. I can handle this. I'm being strong for the people. I'm being strong for them. But that particular Sunday, it's like I don't supposed to be here. He's supposed to be here. And I left out, and I went to my office, and one of the ladies came behind me, and I just broke. I said, I told my elder, I said, you go back and do whatever because I can't finish this today.
Understand me. If you don't think that you will, I am telling you, if you are trying to hold it in, that eventually you are going to break.
Yes.
Go ahead and get you a therapist, a counselor, your pastor, somebody, even if it is a family member, that has dealt with grief. And I always say, if you're going to be a blessing to somebody and to help them through grief, you got to be able to be honest with them about the grief that you had. And so go connect with those people, and have your money, honey. Go and break. That's your assignment tonight. If you are holding it in, I want you to break. I want you to let it out. I want you to release it. Okay. We talk about giving it to God all the time. You can't give it to him if you're holding it all in. You got to really completely release and give it to him. I thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. Patrick, go ahead and pull up Happy Birthday song, the good one, for me, please. This show tonight was dedicated to Mama Dukes, my mommy, Queen Inez Virginia Griffin Stotts. Today is her heavenly birthday. And so I got to say shout out and happy birthday to a real one. We're going to sing happy birthday real quick, and then we're going to have some prayer. I'm going to dance happy birthday as soon as Patrick pull it up. To my mommy, I love me some Inez. She loves her a black wig, child. So I had to go get me a new short black wig and a black suit, because that's what she loves. And so find some things to do that help you honor and commemorate your family members. And then it's not just your husbands, it's your children and sisters, brothers, pastors, friends. Whoever it is, you got to find something you got to be able to commemorate them.
Yes.
And remember, you got to make those good memories so they outbalance the bad memories.
That's right.
Yeah. Can y'all hear it? Y'all can hear it?
Yes.
Wish we had some dollars ain't supposed to give them dollars. Y'all give me the dollars. See, I don't know this one. It's not what I was talking about, but it's okay. It's okay. I was talking about, I'm telling you, I wish I could send my mama some flowers today, but I'm going to go buy me some and put them on my account.
There you go.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay. I want to sing the happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Y'all know I can't dance, right? But I can get down for real.
And down for
Y'all
mama.
ready?
That's right.
All right. So again. I promise you, there are going to be some days you will get to the point to when you be able to celebrate with a laugh on your face. And that is what I want for everyone. It don't mean I won't be crying and falling apart tomorrow, but tonight I'm going to celebrate my mama's birthday and with a smile on my face, because there's nothing else that I can do. I have done everything that she asked me to do. She has taught me very well. So I stand in his grace. I stand in his mercy. And I thank her for everything she ever did for me. So a happy birthday, Mommy. And my goal, every day that I come on this podcast, every day that I reach out to you, every day that I try to pour into you, is to make my parents proud. And I hope that I am doing a good job. She was the kindest, nicest person that I have ever come across. If I could just be an inkling of the woman she was, I am doing a good job. Thank you, everybody out there, for continuing to follow Journey with Trish. Follow these ladies so that you can learn more about these grief groups.
Dance, baby girl.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
She loves the birthday. She loves the party. I think I love the party. That woman loves the party. All right, y'all. We're going to go ahead and pray. We got a house full of preachers. Somebody just take the lead.
God, we thank you for this night. God, we thank you for the gathering of the saints, God, the gathering of those that have lost loved ones. But God, you are still the God that got it all in control. So God, we thank you, God, for your life, for our life, health, and strength. We thank you, God, that you yet got us in our right mind. and you're yet keeping us day by day. God, as we go through the process, God, moment by moment, day by day, week by week, God, you're yet the one that's still in the middle of it. You are the center of our joy. So, God, we thank you because we know that you're not a God that makes a mistake. So, God, continue to bless us. Continue, God, to keep us in our right mind. Comfort us. Give us the peace and the strength that we need. And, God, we'll forever lift you up and give you the praise because, God, you are worthy to be praised. And we give you glory and honor. And we say that it is so in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Amen. Amen.
Myself.
I'm choked up.
It's hot. I gotta go find some AC and some oxygen. Thank y'all. We love y'all. God bless y'all. And good night.
Good
See y'all next
night.
week. Gotta go get some.